This is our first of the year webinar here for Northeast Ohio and buyers and sellers in the real estate world here in Northeast Ohio. And I've got with me, by the way, my name is Scott Carpenter. I'm with the Carpenter Group at Keller Williams. I'm located in Lakewood, Ohio. That's where my office is, but we do work with clients across the region, buying and selling homes. When I say across the region, I'm talking about the 7 counties of Northeast Ohio. I'm just looking at our list of homes sold last year and realized I think we've sold almost in every county this last year. So that said, I've got with me Janelle Kiefer from Ohio Real Title, my partners over there at Ohio Real Title. Every deal that we do needs a Ohio Real Title on it, or at least we try to get them on it. We do have to have a title company involved with every deal that we do in the real estate world. And we also typically have lenders involved, and so we have my partner and my lending partner here, Todd Ligozinski from American Pacific Mortgage. Welcome to you guys, and welcome to the first of the year here. We were supposed to be on last week. I totally forgot why. Oh, I know why, because I was out of town last week. So we weren't able to do our webinar last week. We do these on the third Thursday of the month at 7 o'clock, and here live on Facebook every third Thursday of the month throughout the year. So we're looking forward to a pretty exciting year. We were just talking, the three of us, everybody out there in Facebook land. I'm sure you'll be familiar with all the school closings of late and the ones that might be coming. And so we were just sort of reflecting on the fact that the cold and the snow has been affecting things. And when I say affecting things, I mean it has been sort of a slow start to the year. However, I did want to cover a few topics tonight. Number one on my list is the number of expired listings that came on the market. We predicted this was going to happen last month, and of course we did see a significant uptick in expired listings. Expired listings, by the way, for everybody out there who's not familiar with it, is a listing that was under contract with a listing agent last year, but their agreement has since expired. So we call those expired listings. Those are people who weren't able to sell their home in 2025. We at the Carpenter Group, we do specialize in homes that didn't sell the first time, and so I've been watching those carefully, and we've been reaching out to folks who weren't able to sell just to see if we can't find out if they're going to sell in 2026. I also believe that's going to have an impact on our inventory this year. I do think we'll have a little bit more inventory this year, and so with that, I want to open it up to my partners here, talk a little bit about the market they're seeing now and what they see coming in the coming maybe the next 2 or 3 months. Let's start with you, Janelle. I know we were just talking a little bit about the slowness that you're experiencing.
Yeah, I mean, it's seasonal, so it's no reflection upon really the market right now. It's just in Northeast Ohio in January, people are just kind of getting in the swing. But what I was relaying to Scott and Todd before is that we're seeing a lot more requests for seller information. So whether it be a deed or comps or comparables or how much somebody would make in a seller net sheet. So what that leads me to believe is that we're gonna have a stronger spring market, which will be starting in like 2 weeks. I always say Super Bowl Sunday is the beginning of spring market. So that is very promising that people are thinking about listing and getting their houses prepared. So seeing things slow now, that just reflects 90 days ago. So I think we're on a positive trajectory.
Yeah, that's interesting. So we on my side, we typically don't really get too wrapped up in the seasonality, but that said, it feels like this year we do have that seasonality impact more so than I can say pretty much in the last few years. In other words, it feels maybe like a little bit more normal market in the sense that people are not like super geared up and anxious, but they're just doing what they should be doing, which is evaluating their situation and making a learned decision rather than an impulse decision, whether it's buying or selling. That's sort of how I mean, that's totally anecdotal. I haven't talked to everybody out there, but it does kind of feel like that. Like people are thinking things through a little bit more carefully.
Right.
Todd, how about you? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I think I believe kind of agree with Janelle. It's like I call it the holiday hangover. We had Christmas fall on a Thursday, New Year's fell on a Thursday. A lot of people, that like throws the cadence of everything off quite a bit. Because people are taking extra time off. And then when people have kids, they're home. Kids are home during that period of time. It's hard to want to list your house and kind of like get in that mental space. And then now we've had a lot of these cold snaps. It just kind of throws things off because people just don't want to go outside. That's Cleveland, Ohio. When it gets like this, 10 degrees, 8 degrees, it just kind of pauses it. But like recently, I've had a handful of clients that were want to sell a house, want to get pre-approved. So like I was kind of there doing the whole preparation. Instead of just like going out there selling their home, and it's all their steps. It's getting pre-approved, getting the house ready, giving the guidance of what they need to do. So it started getting busier about 2 weeks ago. We started feeling a little bit of an uptick.
Okay, so where do you guys think? Well, Todd, we'll stick with you. Where do you think the next 2 or 3 months are going, and what it's going to look like?
I think it's all going to pick up. There's been a lot of people waiting. We got a contract. You were talking about expired listings. We got a contract in today, and it was from an expired listing. It just got back on the market. She looked at the house. House came off the market. Actually went under contract, and then it was off the market for like 3.5 months. And then now it just really popped down, and she put an offer in the back on it, what she wanted originally, and now she got it. So I'm sure that other agent, whatever agent was, they weren't happy with what happened, and now the new agent got it. And it literally just hit. It was in one of the heights. So. Yep. I think that's a huge real thing, because if you wanted to sell your house 5 months ago, 6 months ago, 4 months ago, what changed that you wouldn't want to do it now? Usually when you have your mind made up that you want to sell something, you want it gone. You know what I mean? And it's just, they're kind of recircling the wagons and trying to figure out what's the best thing. And that's where they're probably interviewing agents, trying to find out who's the best person for them.
Yeah, I would agree. And it does almost always come down to a couple of things. Number one, I think I was just looking at the numbers today, active listings and so forth, and evaluating this stuff. And one of the key things is price. We had a lot of people last year hoping to still do really well with their listings, and the days on market were slowly but surely going up. In other words, buyers were getting more picky, if not only because of the interest rates, but because of the fact that there weren't, they did have a little bit more inventory to choose from, and not a whole lot, but they did have a little bit more inventory to choose from. And so prices started to stabilize, and the seller who was looking to make a lot of money, they weren't able to do, some of them, not all, but some of them weren't able to do that. I mean, I had a few listings go well over asking, but again, it comes down to the property location, the condition of the property, but pricing now I think is going forward here is going to be super important, and all of those, almost all of the expired listings are probably going to come back on the market. We typically see a huge number of those will come back on the market, but they're likely to come in at a little bit lower, more aggressive selling price to grab the interest of the buyers that are out there. So I'm curious, in your case, in that particular case, do you happen to know, Todd, what it had been on the market for, and whether or not it wasn't a price that made the difference?
I look back, it's something that's on my radar right now. You know what I mean? 265 is what it was last year, is what it was, and we got it. It was at 245.
There you go.
So it's $20,000.
Yep.
So that's.
There you go. And that's a great example of an adjustment. I'm going to pull back the curtain here a little bit on the industry. People talk a lot about their marketing. I actually do spend a tremendous amount of money on our marketing. There's really no amount of marketing that's going to overcome condition. So you may have a $265,000 house in your mind because of the money that you feel you've put into it, the sweat equity and so forth. The market is going to tell you whether or not that's true or not. It's not going to marketing can't make that up. And that's a perfect example of I'm sure that they did a fair amount of marketing. It's almost impossible not to do a fair amount of marketing just by putting it on the MLS. That said, perhaps maybe this other agent did do a better job of marketing, but it really did come down to price. I think we have to be honest with our sellers that no amount of marketing is going to overcome condition and price or location, all three of those things. So I'm saying that just to kind of be clear with everybody that that's my MO is to be clear about that sort of thing with the people out there, so that you're not selling yourself on this idea that you have something that is so much more valuable than everybody else in the market. It never happens that way. It just never does. So Janelle, what do you think about this story about the expired listings? Do you guys and what does it look like on your end? Are you even aware that this wasn't expired when it comes into your house and you start working on it?
Not necessarily. No, not necessarily. The only time that we would know anything really conditionally about the house is like there's a sheriff sale or going into foreclosure. But when it comes to expires, no, not necessarily. We definitely see price adjustments even in the middle of a deal. Negotiation wise. What's funny is that Todd was mentioning the house was off the market for 3 months. I have a bunch of I don't know what is going on, but there's been territory-wise, a lot of foundational issues with houses that I think the sellers a lot of times worry more about aesthetics versus plumbing, electric, foundation. I mean, just blown away at how many times, sellers weren't willing to come down, do repairs, or put money in it. So anyway, so different things, but it is pretty amazing that price is absolutely the number one factor. There are also some things that are coming up, but what I see happening is definitely more signs in yards, and I think it's really going to start happening. We're going to see a lot more action March, April. But I do think that we're just priming the pump right now. And kind of like you said, Scott, you can't just throw lipstick on a pig and say it's worth 265. You got to be realistic because buyers are a heck of a lot more realistic and way better negotiators now. But I think it's a great time to list, and I think it's a great time to look for the house that you're looking for.
I agree. I totally agree. And I'm gonna tag on top of that one thing, and that is that not only are the buyers starting to see these things that are the basics, we'll call them the guts or the foundation of the house, for example, or the roof and the plumbing and the electrical systems and things like that. But insurance companies are taking another hard look. We had one just recently where the insurance company was waiting for the snow to melt so they could see the roof, and go over there and take a picture. So yes, I think that we're going to have a more balanced market coming where we do have more inventory, where we have a more educated buyer, where we have sellers who have to be more pragmatic, realistic about taking care of some of these larger items, because if they don't, they're not going to sell. If you can't get it insured, you won't be able to do a deal. If you have a foundation problem that a buyer can't possibly take on, that's going to have to come out of the seller's side if they are serious about selling. It's just a fact. I mean, we're going to see. I think that's what I'm looking forward to, quite honestly, is a much more balanced market in that respect, where people have to work together, buyers and sellers and their agents have to work together to get a deal to closing. Feels like more work for me, but how about you, Todd?
No, it's funny that you brought up foundation. We've had probably in the past month where there's 3 that I personally had foundation issues. We lost it at home inspection. You know what I mean? The home inspection called it out. One had paneling covering the abode wall, and the home inspector pulled it off, and the walls for the whole wall has to get rebuilt. And that's not a cheap. Matt believe it, it's not cheap, and especially on the driveway side. So it's like top driveways has to be 200. There's only like 18 inches between the driveway, and it's like once you fix the foundation, it's not just fixing the foundation; it's what's causing it so it doesn't happen again. So you're really chasing a lot of things, and it's a big cost. And now that house, when it's branded like that, unless I'm stealing it, I wouldn't want it. You know what I mean? Like, I want it fixed. Most people don't have like 20 grand sitting to invest in that repair.
Todd, don't you see like the sellers aren't going to be making that money up? It's just baseline. So that
the price doesn't go up because they made the repairs.
That's the thing you expect, right? You buy a house, I expect a dry basement. I expect my electrical to be normal. I expect my roof to be decent. You know what I mean? Those are like the basics. The bonuses are great patio, nice deck, new windows, new siding, new kitchen. Like, those are all the bonuses that help build the thing. But the basic fundamentals of a home, not having water intrusion, that's like a basic. Another one was Hydrolock. They did it, and they ran the moisture meter on the basement walls, and the walls are holding moisture. Look good, but they caught it in the rafters. They saw mold and fungus in the rafters in the basement, and it was a flip. So then it's like, all right, if they did it on a flip, they know better. Shame on you, right? What else did you shortcut? And that's where the buyer was. There was no money that he goes, I'm worried about what else they did. And we talked about this before about the good flips, and there's some amazing guys out there and girls that they do an amazing job on flipping. And then there's other ones that it's really questionable what they do.
We have to.
Sorry.
Well, I was gonna say we have to. It's our job too. I think this is where a lot of realtors fall down on the job, is that they're not really trained to look for this sort of thing. And gosh, I'd hate to get my clients all the way down this path. They're excited about the house. They've got you lined up as their lender. They've got paperwork going back and forth with the title company, and then we have an inspection, and there's this nightmare. And I mean, that is you're 2 weeks into this thing. By the way, that is about how long it takes. You sign a deal. It's within 7 to 10 days. You're doing an inspection. In that 7 to 10 days, you're also applying for your loan. You're also the paperwork started at the title company. So in 10 days, which is 2 weeks in our world, you've gone down the path a long way as a buyer. And at that point, it can be so disappointing to run into something like this and not be able to work it out with the seller. That is an almost impossible thing to overcome at that point. Everybody's hearts are broken. Everybody's upset. And I think it starts with the realtors. Honestly, like if I walk into a house like that, I almost always am looking for the problems. And then it's let's get out of here. Let's get out of here. I know aesthetically it looks great, guys. Here's a couple of things. I just don't want to go. Like, let's just not. Unless you've got lots of money to make up for this,
right.
Let's get out of here. Because these guys are certain they're going to get this kind of money. In fact, I was just looking at a listing in Lakewood here and thinking, oh gosh, there's one of those. So that said, I bring that up because I think that's one of the things that we have to let our people know, and at least from our team perspective, is I try to be very clear about that going in, that these are the kinds of things that we could run into. So let's make sure that the house, if I'm on the listing side, let's make sure we've covered everything we can that we can think of, that we can see, that's obvious, or disclose it and take it into consideration with your price, so that when they come in the door, they know that this was a problem, They know that they're going to have to take care of it as a part of the price that we have in mind to sell the place for. Then there's none of this, stuff
Surprise.
that could surprises and ultimately heartbreak, right?
Right. It's emotional.
Because
Yeah.
you have little kids are picking out bedrooms. I've had that so many times. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
the kids are picking out bedrooms, and you're mentally just like I know when I sell something, it's ready to go. I'm like ready to part with it. Let's get rid of it. I'm done.
Yeah, you said that at the beginning. Once you decide to sell, you've decided, and that means you're buying something else, right? That means you're moving. That means your heart is set on something else, right?
And then when I want to buy something, I'm all over it. So I want it. You know what I mean? And then when you get it pulled underneath it, then it does take some wind out of you, because you mentally committed to that. Now you got to start the process over again. And it's but in the same respect though, you do dodge bullets. You know what I mean? So like some of the people with the foundation stuff, that's why the home inspection is important. I mean, it proves that a lot of these agents don't know what they're looking at, and you just dodge a huge, $20,000+ bullet. So
right. Well, and I also think that there are degrees of problems. So, for example, the one that you just described, Todd, this Boeing wall, for example, if I've got a 100-year-old house and there's a 1-inch bulge in that foundation, chances are that's not as big a deal as a 20-year-old house with a 1-inch bulge in that foundation wall. So that said, both cases require someone to take a look at it. But the reality is that and I've had examples of both of those. And I mean, there probably isn't very many houses, at least very many 1,500 to 2,000 square foot houses that are 125 years old that don't have some moisture in the foundation, for example. So these are things that we have to put into perspective with our buyers and our sellers. Because it creates a false sense of security when you think that it's all good, it's all buttoned up. Well, it's still a 125-year-old house. So right. So there is a point at which I'm kind of, in my case at least, I'm going to point out the obvious. I'm going to point out my big concerns, and I'm going to educate people on what they should expect given the age of the house and given how likely it is that you're going to be able to get it insured and so forth. We hear a lot about knob and tube, for example, knob and tube wiring. I've had real estate agents, just like their hair gets on fire when they see it, and it's like, well, wait a minute, it's that's our housing stock. I mean, that's the inner ring suburbs, that's Cleveland. I mean, you're not going to suddenly all of that's gone overnight. It's not going to happen. So as an example, there's all kinds of things that there's nuance within all of this, but it's also incumbent upon us to make clear, well, this is the kind of thing that we're probably going to have to deal with, whether it's because of the lender, the inspection, or a health and safety issue. We need to be aware, and that I think is another area where there's a lot of agents who, and I'm not calling out agents out, but just I'm throwing it out there because it's an important thing that I think a lot of agents kind of skip over. And unfortunately, we get down, like I said, we get down the path, and and people's hearts are broken, or checks have to be written, and people are just kind of not in a very good mood after that. So.
Well, Scott, and so you've been doing this a while. It comes with experience and the willingness to learn and figure out what you're looking for. There's a lot of newer agents and a lot of brokerages that I get to sit in on meetings and say, you're not an inspector, hands off. If you disclose something, if the seller learns something, you have to disclose it. So the less is more. But I think what's important about having a tenured agent as yourself is that you know what you're looking at. And I think that's really important because you can dodge a bullet or it's a negotiating tool or something, but you've seen it and and like you mentioned too, the Boeing of a 100-year-old home versus a 20-year-old, you know how to gauge you can talk your buyer off a ledge, and you can also talk the listing agent into, like I said, a better deal for your client at the end of the day. But I do think it's interesting how newer agents, they're like hands off. They're told.
Yeah, and I get it, and I totally get it. It's not their area of expertise. I've been doing construction for all of my life, and so it's I'm gonna be more upfront about it just because of my my 40 years plus of experience. I'm sorry, I just said a terrible number, but anyway. But I'm not boasting. I'm just saying that I think I think these are the kinds of things that are going to become more and more important on deals. Period. Agreed. It's not going to be the free for all money flying around, and it's just not going to be like that. No, period. For at least the next couple of years. I think Todd, you and I can agree that we're probably not going to see a major shift in interest rates over the next year. Maybe a quarter, maybe a 0.5% towards the end of the year, depending upon what's going on in the geopolitical world and how it's impacting our economies.
So rates to crash though. If rates crash, there's lots of problems, and that's the part that everyone thinks that's going to happen. Like when rates, if we go down to the threes again, it's because bad things, the world's falling apart.
Right. Horrible things. Yeah.
We go to war. We go to some crazy war, or
just the instability. Just instability can cause these kind of shifts. That said, I'm kind of liking where we're at. If we can be between 5.5 to 6.25, it feels like it's pretty balanced. How do you feel?
Agreed. And you can get stuff in the fives now. You know what I mean? Like
I was just gonna say
out there. You know what I mean? It's just there's variables to anything, but it's like you that stuff's out there, and it's it just there might be a cost associated with it, but you can get it and not have to worry about refinancing for a while. Because I was just gonna say if you bought down to an interest rate that makes sense to you, it's gonna be way cheaper to do that than to refinance in 5 years. Yep. And because the thing is, when you refinance, most people they also recast. They go out another 30 years.
They just add another, and they add in the equity that they just take the equity out and they add it to their loan, and it's like starting all over again.
Yeah, and the thing is, we can't buy time. That's the thing for all of us. We can't buy time. It's great you can save some money, but eventually, I'm in the mortgage business, but I also believe in home ownership. And I think there's a day you want to own your home. I think that's kind of like how my grandparents lived, and you got the point where you pay off your house, not keep leveraging it, because a lot of people leverage it for stuff. And cars, credit cards, whatever. You know what I mean? Vacations and all that. And you don't really want to do that. You want to eventually get it paid off, have that stability, because when you have a mortgage paid off, it's a breath of, that's stability.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. We're going to be coming back to this topic just generally about what we think where we think the market is going. Every month we'll be covering the market updates during our live stream here, but we're also going to be tackling some topics. Todd and I were talking. Todd actually sent me a list of his ideas for topics going forward. One of the things that I want to cover before we sign off here, and that is that and we're going to cover this again in the coming months, probably next month. But waiting is costing Cleveland buyers. I think that's a real. When I say Cleveland, I think Northeast Ohio. Based on this idea of interest rates, this idea that they're waiting for the interest rates to come down and somehow magically they're going to be in 4.5 or something like that. And I just want to touch on the topic of waiting generally, but to say right away that I think the savvier buyers right now, whether they are home buyers or in my commercial world that I'm working in as well, mixed use, the savvy buyers are in the market. Wouldn't you agree? Yeah. Notwithstanding rates, notwithstanding any other market conditions, they're in the market. The savvier buyers. And I think that's something that I'm hearing this from other agents across the United States too. Janelle, you kind of alluded to it when it came to the sellers. If they're looking for net sheets, then that means they're thinking about selling.
Yeah.
Those are the savvy sellers right now. Those are the savvy people thinking about should I be waiting anymore? Probably not. That's why I'm asking for that net sheet. And I think our savvy buyers are actually showing up in the market. We're getting a lot of inbound traffic right now from buyers because they're looking again. They're starting to look again. What do you think about this, Todd?
No, you're spot on with it, because if you're not, you're never going to time everything perfectly. You know what I mean? Timing is when just you're ready. You're fortunate enough to be able to do it, right? And you have to prepare. To sell your house, you have to prepare to know what you're going to net out, to know what you have to do to buy a house. You got to start, getting everything in preparation. On both sides. When you list it, you're most likely going to buy something. You're most likely not going to cash it out to the point where your next house is going to be free and clear of the proceeds of that transaction. You have to prepare. Let it be credit improvement. Let it be just knowing what payments are. I had a client. We were going over payments, and they're putting $200,000 down in the next house, and the new payment was going to be like $3,300, like a $600,000 home. And they were blown away because they're coming from a $250,000 home. They were blown away. She didn't understand how much the property taxes were. So we started taking the school district and like, yeah, your taxes on this house. Like, let's do a live run, right? Let's work up a live deal. What house? You can have it right now. What do you want? Because they qualified. And they realized the taxes were $11,000 a year. They thought it'd be like $5,000 because they're paying $3,000 right now, $3,600. And I'm like, they thought it'd be like, a couple grand more. I'm like, no, that's not. That zip code makes a difference. And you can get that same house in a different zip code, and the taxes are going to be dramatically different. So sometimes those live runs put a reality check into what you want to do, because you have this idea. But until you use the word like test drive, I think, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Until you look at that, it kind of puts things in a little bit different perspective. Just like when you sell your house, how much am I going to get out of it? Does this make sense for me to do right now? Do I want to take that next leap? You got to like look at it and kind of figure out what makes sense, or what do I got to put in my house to make it get top dollar, like the one down the street did.
Right. Janelle, what do you think?
Yeah, I think right now is a great time to buy. You're gonna have less competition. So the longer you wait, the more buyers there are. There's more competition in the market. The higher you're probably gonna pay for the house, or the more
you just lose.
You're just gonna lose. Right. So I think now is a perfect time to buy, especially if your margins are really thin. If you have to factor in homeowners insurance and taxes and everything, for your mortgage, whatever Todd's looking for. People don't really factor in a lot of everything that needs to go into a mortgage. So I say, why wait? You're not gonna get these crazy interest rates. If you need to buy, go now, because otherwise you might be the only one putting an offer on a house, might get a better deal than you ever would have, and that house might sell in 3 more months for like 20 grand more, and you're like, oh, I just don't even qualify anymore. So I think go now. Now is the time.
You're right, because if it's right now, if you have a house you listed and you're not getting any activity, you're in panic mode, because you hear the stories that the house went on the market, they sold it in 3 days. Secret, we got bad weather, people don't want to look at it, right? So it's like, it's going to that time. You get 2 weeks, people get in panic mode, you submit an offer, and most likely you have a better opportunity for that offer to be accepted, just because there's only 2 people interested, and the other person to give us an offer. I mean, this is like really the best time if you really want something.
Right. Yeah. So as a buyer, I totally agree. I think you should get in the market. On the selling side, we talked about some of the being pragmatic, realistic about things. Days on market, you just mentioned, Todd. Days on market are up generally over the last 6 months. And in this last couple of months, we're anywhere between 30 to 40 days is average for Northeast Ohio. So yes, you could sell your house in a weekend. If it's in a great location, priced right, and in great condition, that can always happen. But the reality is that you're probably not going to be doing that in the next few months. That said, it is very, very specific to neighborhoods. All of these statistics they can be wildly different across the track, so to speak. And so we have to be sort of, as I'm sort of generalizing here for all of these things. I want people to know that your situation may be very different. That give us a call, reach out. I'll help you navigate that, so you know exactly what to expect. That said, I'm curious for you guys also. I feel like we're probably more likely to see more homes that when they're coming on the market, the seller is going to be contingent on finding a home, or vice versa. A buyer has a home to sell, and therefore will be contingent upon, when they make an offer, they'll be contingent upon selling their existing home. I feel like that's more likely this year than we've had in recent years, and I'm just curious if you guys also feel the same.
I think we've seen that the last few years. I think sellers are so nervous to list because, where am I going to go? But what I am seeing, we are going to see that. We are, Scott. I also think that we're going to see more creativity come from the agents, like, rent backs, or, certain circumstances to accommodate both parties and to lock in that sale. So yeah, absolutely, we're going to see that more. Also, we're going to see the inventory open up, so hopefully we're not going to see it as much. We saw it in title a lot last year. So hopefully the pendulum will swing, that it makes it easier for everybody. But I just think the creativity of the realtor is going to really be a very important key to educating all parties. So yeah, I see it happening. I think that you guys can be creative.
Yeah. Todd, what do you think?
There's also like bridge loans, but you need to be in a pretty strong equity position to do that. That's the tough part. There are tools, but the equity position, most people aren't in that spot. But if you fall in that bucket, there's a segment of people that can't. But unfortunately, the contingency, it does scare a lot of people. It depends on the offers you're getting. So if you want to, you're not getting offers right away, and you get a number, and if you work with someone, it's a win-win for everybody. Because as long as the other house, if that house is being marketed, the price right, I think that's the biggest piece. Is like, all right, what are you selling, and how much are you selling it for?
Well, there you go. We've got one right now that we are doing right this minute, and the stars are aligning. But it's really up to the agent to align the stars. I'll give you an example where in talking with the other agent, I did the comps on the property that was being sold. I made sure for my seller, who was accepting this offer contingent upon the sale of another home, that was going to happen. And then I looked at that agent's track record to make sure that they were going to be able to do the job of listing this house and get it sold. How many houses did they sell last year? Where were those houses? What were the price points? How many days on market? That sort of thing. So that I could say with confidence to my seller that it looked good. Like, we have a good chance of getting this to the finish line. And then coordinating that. Sorry, Janelle, this is one that we didn't get to you guys because I'm just saying, because the title company, we needed to have the title company. I wanted it to be one title company, and that's the only way to do this, right? So that we can get a close at the table. Hopefully, we'll be doing, in this particular one, our plan is to close the same day. So we'll be doing the double close that day. That all creates a wonderful solution, but you can't get there unless you've done all of that legwork. You just don't accept the number. Oh, great, I got the price I wanted and the timing and everything else. That is setting yourself up for failure in a situation like this. But I actually think that, and there's another one. I got another deal that's, and Todd, you're familiar with this one, where someone's moving from out of town. We do have these deals. I'm starting to see more of that kind of thing happening. And I think, Janelle, to your point, I think it's just we're just going to be, we're going to have to be more creative. We're going to have to be more, we have to make sure we've done the research,
Right.
and make sure we ask all the right questions in this coming market. I think we're going to see more work for realtors and for lenders and for title companies, because we're going to have a little bit more complicated situations in this coming year. What do you think? Am I crazy?
No, and that's part of experience to be able to juggle that, right? You have to have experience to be able to juggle that. To communicate, like communication is really important with doing all that, making sure everyone's in line, and just setting good expectations up front. It's all
Yep.
doable, but
Yep.
it's like every transaction's an experience, right? You know what I mean? And it's another, experience that you get a little bit familiar with. You had a scenario, and that's the fortunate part when you work with people that have been doing it for a while.
Right.
They've had these experiences, and it's not like, and they're not in panic mode, like, what do I do now? What do we got to do? Or ask the right questions. Like vetting the property. That's a lot of. I've had scenarios where that did not happen, where they're not like, how much is this in the house for? Look at the agent, and unfortunately, if this is like their third house that they ever sold, this is gonna be a bumpy ride. What I mean? It's gonna be a crash landing. We'll help you through it. It's gonna be ugly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, let's leave it with that. On at least from my perspective, I think we have an exciting year coming. I think it's going to be a year with more work to get deals done and to serve our clients, whether they're buyers or sellers. I guess that's sort of my synopsis of tonight's meeting. Janelle, how about you?
Yeah, I say, let's go. It's January. It's going to be a great year. And if you're a layman to real estate and lending and title, just go sell. Just go sell your house. Just go buy your house. And let the experts walk you through. You don't need to know. You don't need to know everything. You don't need to worry about the rates. You just need to go with the trusted partner that can guide you. And I think this year is going to be a bounce back. So I'm excited about it.
I agree 100%. How about you, Todd?
No, I think it's gonna be. I think it's gonna be more of a stable environment. You know what I mean? I think it's not gonna be the Wild West. I think there's gonna be a lot more opportunities. So when people hold on to what these houses, they think they can get crazy money for them. That was kind of like holding on to when rates were 3% and things like that. There was a period, but that period is really over. You're not going to put a house on and just get $40,000, $50,000 more. Does it happen? Yeah, but that's just those are the few and far between, and it makes it better for. I think it makes it a healthier market because people have to price their stuff competitively. Offers, you know what I mean? It's going to be a lot more stable, and I think that's what we need.
Yeah, I think add to stability, affordability. I've been reading articles in the last few weeks about our region generally is probably one of the most affordable regions in the United States. And right now it's cold, and so maybe we don't see the huge amount of sales right now. But I have to say, I think that that is a factor that's going to play very, very well for us in Northeast Ohio. And I think we're going to see a lot more deals this year than we saw this last year. And I think that overall, we're going to have a tremendous year for buyers and sellers. So personally, I am super excited for the coming market, and it's folks like you. I think they're going to make it really a wonderful year, making it possible to get through as I said earlier, are going to be more difficult, more complex deals. That said, I feel like there's going to be a lot more because things are sort of, as you said, Todd, stability is a key thing, and I think affordability is going to be felt by buyers and sellers in a way that they haven't felt over the last few years. So I think that's going to bode well for more sales just generally. So with that, everybody, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We went a little over time, but I'm glad we touched on all the topics that we did. And I hope that if you're out there in Facebook land, that you will if you've enjoyed this, I hope you'll log back on. Next month, we will be doing some advertising about it, making sure everybody out there knows when the next one is. It will be the third Thursday of February. And we will be getting the primary topic out there beforehand. And we're really looking forward to seeing you again in the future. So with that, everybody, thank you very much and have a great night and stay warm.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.